So today we're going to look at 4 emotions: joy, sadness, suspense, and surprise, and the techniques behind each one. So sheet music tells you 3 things: what notes to play, when to play them, and how to play them. Things like loud or soft, smooth or detached. Hi, I'm Anna, and I'm a piano teacher, and I work with Flowkey to help adult beginners get to the point where their playing actually sounds like music. So let's get into the first emotion, which is joy, and we'll start with a piece that has it right there in the name. The notes are right, and the timing is right, but the joy isn't quite there yet. And the reason is that a joyful phrase needs to feel uplifting and celebratory, kind of like this. Did you hear the difference? That technique is called dynamic shaping, and it's where you vary how loud or how soft you're playing in order to shape the direction of the music. You can think of the melody actually as a group of phrases, some that drive the music forward and others that bring a sense of resolution. And this helps to breathe some life into the music. Play a short melody completely flat, and then play it again with just one instruction. Vary the dynamics throughout the phrases, and you'll hear a difference right away. So as we just saw, joy is about uplift and expansion and celebration, while sadness, on the other hand, is built from something quite different. It's about weight and a kind of slow, inevitable descent. And a really good example of this is Chopin's Prelude in E minor. Here's what it sounds like if we just play the notes without paying attention to the emotional impact of the music. You recognize it, but it kind of sounds like reading the words of a poem out loud with no feeling in your voice. Now here it is with feeling. So what actually changed? Well, the first thing is the pedal. So in a piece like this, the sustain pedal lets each harmony ring and linger, which gives the music kind of like a certain gravity and also continuity. And the key here is to kind of change the pedal when the harmony changes so that you don't get a muddy overlap. But within each harmony, you want that resonance to be there. The second thing is touch. So for something like this, you're not just striking the key, you're really like leaning into it. And that way the note arrives softly, but with this kind of core presence to the sound. And another thing I want to mention about touch is something we call voicing, which is where you control the different dynamics of the notes that you have. And voicing is where you bring out one note or one, like a melody line, for example, at a different dynamic range than the other notes. And here, I think it's really important to have that melody line kind of singing over this bass that you're creating with the left hand. The left hand is 3 notes against just the 1 note in the right hand. So you don't want the left hand to overpower the right hand. And just bringing out that melody, really having it sing above the chords that are changing underneath it, makes it so much richer and dynamic to listen to. But you also have something interesting going on in the left hand, which is every set of chords, there's usually only 1 or 2 notes changing. And you can even voice within the chord. You can lean into one of the 3 notes more than the others and bring out whatever is changing. Just that attention to detail, pulling the listener into what is creating this emotional change in the chords helps make your playing sound even more sophisticated. So let me show you how that sounds. And the third thing is following the phrase down. So as the melody descends, you can gently ease off of the volume, which makes the phrase kind of feel more like a long sigh, like this. Quick pause here, because what you've learned so far is already enough to try on any song right now. Open Flowkey and find something you want to learn or that you've already been working on. Pick just one of these 2 techniques to start and play through the song with that technique in mind. And if you aren't yet a subscriber, you can try it out for free, explore thousands of songs in our library, and find exactly what you're looking for. And the link is in the description. Now let's get into the next 2 emotions. And these are a bit different because they're less about gradual shaping and more about contrast and surprise. So suspense is interesting because it can be created in a few different ways. So sometimes it comes from a relentless build, like getting louder and faster until the tension is like almost unbearable. But it can also come from the opposite. So a sudden silence or a pause that lasts like eerily long or a phrase left unresolved. And what all these have in common is that they put the listener in a state of not quite knowing what's going to happen next. So when it comes to building suspense, a great and well-known example is Grieg's In the Hall of the Mountain King. The whole piece is built on one repeated theme, and Grieg wrote some useful instructions directly into the score. So every time the theme comes back, it's like a bit faster and a little bit louder, from a quiet creep at the beginning to an all-out crash at the end. So here's what it sounds like at one speed and volume throughout, without any articulation or varying the way that the notes are being played. So nothing alarming about that, it's just kind of an odd little march. Now here's how it actually goes. So what's the difference here? Well, playing staccato, which means short and detached, getting gradually faster and louder. So those are the things which create this feeling of inevitability. The listener's nervous system is actually kind of tracking this escalation. And by the time you arrive at that loud, fast version, there's a sense of unyielding chaos that's almost physical. Next up is surprise. And the piece we're using is very aptly nicknamed because it's Haydn's Surprise Symphony. So surprise is in the second movement, and it opens with a gentle, quiet theme. It's simple, it's almost childlike. And then with no warning at all, one enormous chord crashes in at full volume. So let me play you the opening first. Nothing surprising there. Very polite. You're settling in, expecting more of the same. And then, now the chord itself is completely ordinary. There's nothing like unusual about it harmonically, but what makes it a surprise is everything that came before it. Haydn spent the whole opening establishing one expectation, quiet, reserved, and then he broke it loudly. So that's the technique again here, dynamic contrast. And the reason it's worth understanding is this: a loud moment is only as powerful as the quiet that came before it. If the theme had been at medium volume, the chord would have been just louder. But because the theme was genuinely soft, the chord lands like a shock. So anytime you want a moment to really land, like a chord, a high note, a sudden accent, think about how well you can set it up and then let the contrast do the work. So here's the thing I'd love for you to take away from all this. The techniques we've talked about today aren't a formula for producing a specific feeling on demand. They're tools for playing with intention. What your listener does with that intention, whether they feel what you felt or something completely different, that's not a flaw in the music. That's actually the whole point of it. So the gap between playing all the right notes and actually sounding like a pianist is smaller than you might think. It's not a harder piece, and it's not another year of practice. It's paying attention to what you do with the notes that matters. So the shape of the phrase, the touch of the keys, the weight of a chord, and the silence before that special moment. If you're looking for pieces to apply them to, we've got a video on 5 beginner songs that sound more difficult than they actually are to play. It's linked right here. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next one.